Hello, everyone. My name is Teresa McCloy, and you're listening to the Real Life Process podcast. I am super excited today to have a special guest. But before we get to introducing Marilyn Vancil, I am so excited that you're here. We are in the middle of a new book release as well, Learning to Live from Rest, Not Rush, Doing What Matters. And so I'm excited to have Marilyn here to kind of help us even to expand on that. Just this place of living into a new season of life. And you will love meeting Marilyn and hearing her story of just the discovery of sometimes in our faith journey, what is next? Are we being invited to? And Marilyn has a very neat perspective, interesting perspective on that as she's journeyed through life. So we're going to dive into that. We'll give you some references later on in the podcast, how you can connect to Marilyn. But Marilyn, welcome to the podcast.
Teresa, it's great to be here. I really appreciate this time, and I know it'll be a really fun conversation with you.
It will be. We have gotten to spend some time together at some conferences and events, and Marilyn's actually been on the podcast before, back when we were talking deeply about the tool of the Enneagram. And that was kind of where we started on this whole journey. And I think that's what's interesting as you and I talk is we've both kind of done a journey through that tool, through spiritual direction, coaching, just all of the things that we've come around, and we haven't gotten to talk in a while. I remember when your first book came out, Self to Lose, Self to Find, and you actually self-published that first book, and then that got picked up and was a phenomenal book in the marketplace, but you're in a new place. So just give us a little backstory of the work that you do. Just introduce yourself to the audience here that's listening today. And then let's dive in, kind of come up to the current time. But give us a little, who's Marilyn?
Who's Marilyn? Okay. Yes. Well, I am, I live in Spokane, near Spokane with my husband, Jeff. And we just this last weekend celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary, which is kind of shocking. It feels like you're supposed to be old when you do that, but we don't feel old. We're still leaning into how we're being led by God. We have 4 grown children and 11 grandchildren that live nearby. So that's a great part of my life. Yes, well, I first wrote Self to Lose, Self to Find, was very much, I love the Enneagram. It's such a valuable tool. I found it so helpful in my own life. And at about that same time, I became a spiritual director and leading people. How are they with God, and how is God with them in their everyday ordinary life? And so I do that quite a bit now. And then as I was pondering, just looking at my own life and realizing that I love the Enneagram, but it really I wasn't even accessing it that much anymore. And like, well, what's that? Here I am, a teacher of it, which I still am. But it seemed like it went to the side to the deeper things that I was learning from God and in my own life and the transformation. So when I was approached actually to write another book, which I hadn't intended to do or thought I would or wanted to, because I know how hard it was. It's a lot of work. I thought, well, I wanted to frame the Enneagram in its place of the bigger story that we're on, and I believe God is drawing us toward the center, that if we're willing and if we're facing that direction, that we are being drawn by God toward the more centered life, and that we really, in Enneagram terms, start to be all of the types, not just stuck on the outer circle in our what I call the adapted self patterns, but we actually become more balanced in all of the types and an expression of more of all of the types, even though we always have a specialty. We have a specialty that that really is
a
ours.
lens through which we see the world. There's for sure.
Exactly. And so I just started praying and looking and researching, and this book, really, I call it a pot of soup. because it includes I just pulled off everything that was in the pantry of my own life. If you make a good pot of soup, you pull out whatever's there
I
and you
love
put it
that.
in the pot and let it simmer and stir. And so I just started pulling off and recognizing breakthroughs in my own life and stories from my spiritual directees and their breakthroughs and favorite authors, and put it all in this pot. And I also created a new paradigm that I feel like puts the Enneagram in the bigger story of our lives, not as the end all be all or the answer to everything that we are and do and be, but it's part of a bigger story of our journey toward a more
I love that.
centered
And
life. Yeah.
so many things that you share there, I resonate with deeply. And I did in your first book as well. And I'm starting to in this book as well, because I would mirror what you just said in that I loved the tool of the Enneagram, still do. It was transformational for me in a season where God gave me the gift of that tool through some of the work by Claire Lowridge with the Harmony Triad model. And, she too is a spiritual director. And I just loved seeing it through how God designed us. I really feel like if I had just known the Enneagram, and it actually was how I was first introduced in that tool of here's your type and here's who you are. And it kind of boxed. And I love your language. I still use it to this day of the adaptive and authentic. And because it just resonates with me in language. And if I would have been boxed into that, I don't think it would have felt as true to me. But when I could see it through the lens of the full circle, and I often say the same thing that, the center is what we're moving towards. We'll probably never get there this side of heaven, right? That's the complete wholeness. But we can learn, I believe, to reflect all of the parts. And I love that you're doing this work. Thank you, because it gives me a new, renewed sense. And I'm sure, that's your desire, a new, renewed sense of, oh, there's still more. There's still more to dive into. There's still more to learn. So thank you for giving it a new flavor, we'll say, staying with the pot of soup, right?
Yeah.
Giving it a new flavor, for putting it all in, because I know for me, and I would say many people that have done work with the Enneagram and love it as a tool will be drawn to the what's next. What could this be and what's possible? If you're new to the Enneagram, just explore from this angle that Marilyn's giving you and take this new approach as she kind of fleshes it out on this podcast. I told her before we started recording, I haven't talked about this tool, but to be honest, we're not really talking about the Enneagram today. So if you tuned in thinking this was going to be an Enneagram conversation, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised as to what we explore and where we go. And then the beautiful part is Marilyn has a brand new book that she can take you on that's called Beyond the Enneagram. So it's definitely an invitation to there. So you just kind of shared with us that, yes, you got to a place where it had set aside and you were what next, and you've put all this into the pot, but walk us through what you discovered for yourself at that kind of turning point in your journey of what was the invitation?
Wow. Yes, the invitation, it's just kind of shocking to think about. I was so entrenched with the Enneagram, and then it was sort of shocking to me to realize I wasn't using it very much. And am I being disingenuous to be teaching it? But I don't think I am, because for some people on the beginning of the journey, it's a really, really, really helpful tool. And but I had this sense, probably the thing I wanted to say the most in my book, and that I was feeling the most, is that God is drawing us to the center. And I introduced that in my first book, that we have a center, the spiritual center of intelligence. It's not just the head, heart, and gut that the Enneagram, traditionally looks at or, portrays. And that, what was it like to move to the center, and what is that journey like? And my favorite chapter is the last chapter called Glory to Glory, and that we are moving from glory to glory. And I really believe that every person is born glorious, and that by God's grace, by God's work in our lives, if we're willing and responsive, which is a big part of accessing what God has for us, that we move from glory to glory, from substance to substance, as opposed to maybe the old kind of Christian message is that you die to yourself, you become less and less, so Jesus increases more. And I was really sensing a big resistance to that. Even in my first book, I wrote about that a little bit. But no, Jesus made people more and more, not less and less. He, on the earth, he healed people, he spoke to people, he invited people to freedom and a bigger life and a good life, to return to their truest, created, glorious self. And so I'm passionate about that for myself. When I realized, oh, I'm being transformed from glory to glory, from substance to substance, to more and more of my truest self, I really I want people to experience that. And so and experience the freedom of it. Freedom is a big word for me, to just to be free, to live into that best truest self that God, and that, it's the work of God, but it's also our response to God, and leaning into and allowing God to transform us, which is a journey. It's not an easy one, like, woohoo, yes, let's just, sign up for that. Some of it is hard work, a lot of hard work.
So let me ask you from this context, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Okay.
But in a practical sense, when you think about how yourself, more of your adaptive side, would have resisted that glory to glory experience, and now, even through the work that you've done with this diagram we'll talk about here in a minute called the drawing, what does that look like practically compared to 5 years ago or 3 years ago? How would that live out in a relationship or in a circumstance? You mentioned a really large family. You've been married 50 years.
Oh, I lost your audio there, so I don't know.
Are we back?
What happened? Yeah, we are back.
Okay.
So maybe ask that again.
Yes. So how would that play out for you? You've been married 50 years. You have a very large family. Congratulations. We'll be 40 years. So we're not far behind you this November. How does that play out for you compared to maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where you were like, I'm not really accessing this tool anymore, I've moved beyond? What does glory to glory look like in a day-to-day?
Good question. Well, I'll just give you a very recent example.
Love it.
Practically is just paying attention to where I get twisted up. Like, there's something making itself known to me, a pattern that has been there, that I call it, seeing the eddies or seeing the vortexes that we get sucked into, but not just seeing it and judging it or being mad, or letting, just ignoring it, by going, God, what is that? And so practical example was this weekend, we had this celebration for our 50th wedding anniversary, and we actually did a church service. And it went longer than I expected it to. And so, but it was beautiful all the way, it was lovely. And it was on YouTube, you can see it. It was a beautiful service of, we served the Eucharist to our friends, and we had quite a crowd there. But I started getting antsy, like, this is going too long. This is going too long. Oh, I think this is going too long. And I do that. I want to rush things. I realize, and when someone's up speaking, I'm going, oh, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. So then after it was over, I just said, okay, God, what is that? Why do I feel that? Come on. And it's a sense of we're imposing on people's time. People are getting antsy. It's all about what everybody else was feeling, not what
Oh,
I was feeling.
wow.
Like, oh no, we've taken up too much of their time. They must be as antsy as I am. And it was all about this, I've got to rush through things, or not honoring space for myself.
Mm.
And so I'm still sort of deep diving into that. Like, God, where did that come from? Where did I get the message that I heard to hurry up, hurry up, hurry up? You're taking up too much space. You're taking up too much time. Don't impose on people. And so it's an invitation when I sense that, instead of going, oh yeah, I do that all the time, or even not even to being aware of it, I sense an invitation from God. Okay, here's a little topic, Marilyn. Here's an issue, Marilyn, you're not free in. So let's look at it. And
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful invitation for God to say, I want to set you free from that. You don't,
I
and
love the story. Yes.
what's
I
the
love
underlying story?
yeah, I love the story though. And thank you for sharing that and being, very authentic, because that's the practical of how this plays out. We use a tool in the work that we do that we kind of design, called the now process. Notice, open to the three centers, open to the whole circle, right? And then give a whole self response. And, it's that thinking, feeling, acting piece. And I could hear that in your story. Here's the circumstance. I'm noticing all these things. What's the invitation to notice, and where did that come from? And why, where in my childhood, where in my past, where in my young married life, where in raising my kids did I always feel the hurry, or
hurry up, hurry up, hurry up.
we're not moving at a fast enough, or whatever it might be. So thank you for that. Cause I think that helps us see, like, how do I use this? Where do I pause to take notice? What I also like is that you're still pondering it, right? That's that discernment piece. Didn't need to make a decision about it right then.
Right.
You could just discern with it as you move through and see what that offered you. Well, I want to shift a little bit and really kind of dive in. Marilyn's been kind enough to say that she would send us a graphic of her drawing, what she calls the drawing. And we will put that in the show notes. So you'll be able to see that. Some of you may be watching this on YouTube, so you may want to just stop, go to the show notes, pull that up. Would be very helpful as we have this discussion. But if you're not, or if you're listening on your favorite podcast player, you could pause and go grab this, but listen through. And this will be one of those episodes you're going to want to go back to when you can see this drawing. I'm cheating because I have it in front of me here on our screen, but Marilyn's just kind of going to walk us through, how did this come out of her as she had these thoughts? And the design of it is actually pretty profound. I mean, there's a lot of depth in just looking at this. And I love the language. I've always enjoyed your language because it's hits me as very practical. That's just the only way I know how to say it. So walk us through kind of what transpired as you put this together.
Yeah. Well, it was a work, of a lot of prayer, a lot of pondering. And sometimes I thought, is this really dumb? What am I doing creating a new picture for people? But I really wanted to illustrate the spiritual journey and the movement, as from the adapted self patterns to the authentic self, which is just the movement of that. And what is the movement? And so the drawing is concentric circles. And I like to build it out from the middle. And so the middle is a circle with a heart in it. And to me, that's representative of, in a triangle, and representative of the triune God, the God, the creator, God, the Christ, and God, the companion, the spirit. And that there's a heart there because God is love. And if we're living in full understanding, like you said too, we won't experience this until we're on the other side of this earthly life. But God's love is the core of our existence. And so that's where we're being drawn. And the reason I called it the drawing is because it is a drawing, literally a drawing, but I called it that because it is an illustration of God drawing us, the drawing of God toward the center, to bring us home, to take us to that union with God, that connection with God. And so that's in the middle. And then right on the outside of that is lists, words. Well, and probably the picture you get doesn't have all the words, but maybe I can send that. But it's the fruit of the Spirit, or the divine qualities that are the expressions of God that we get to express, and that we have more love, more joy, more peace, more power when we're closer into the center with God. And the next circle is the affirming love voice. Who are we truly? Our authentic self. God says you are lovable, you are significant. And if you know the Enneagram well enough, you know that those words tie into the Enneagram types, but they're true for all of us.
That's what I love, Marilyn. I want to pause you right there, because I love that thought of, yes, they do tie to what we know as kind of the 9 centers, but I love how you've put this drawing together. You are significant. You are worthy. You are beloved. You are valued. You are whole. You are known. You are accepted. You are enough, and you are protected. Because those are beautiful things to say over that God says over us, right?
Absolutely.
That God says over us, and they all apply. There are times when I need to hear the companion, God's voice saying, you're protected. Even though that's not my home space or my Enneagram center or whatever it's called. Gosh, I need that. So I love that circle of just those adaptive or authentic self spaces.
Those messages. Yeah. And of course, it's not exclusive that these are the only messages, but general, that it's the closer we are to the center, the more we live out of that place of being the beloved and being protected and being significant. We know it, and we live from that space. And as you said, we can repeat that over and over again and be reminded of that.
I will say one more thing there too. I love what you just said about they're not the only ones, because a question for many of those that you are people helpers, you work in these places of spiritual direction or coaches or things, there's a deeper question. What does it feel like for you to be protected? What does it feel like for you to be significant? So as you think about these great references that Marilyn gives in this drawing, gosh, there's so much deeper conversation you could have with a person around each of these. They're jumping off points because everybody's story is different, right? And so you've just really laid out a beautiful tool here. So take us to that outside circle.
Yeah. And so then way on the outside, there's a circle with all the defenses, all the things that are barriers that we have, are part of our our story growing up: false narratives, sins, defenses, protective device, our strategies to be protected, and to I should have brought the drawing with me in front of me, so I'll let you read it.
Yes. So let me read the strategies, because they are, the total opposite of what we just did. You're bad. You're not lovable. You're not worthy. That one's mine. You're deficient, right? Is it deficient? You're deficient. Sorry, it's a little small. So you're stupid. Wow. There's one. It's been these are, I call them the crazy tapes we play in our head.
Absolutely.
These are the crazy tapes that we're like, if
I could come from somewhere.
And, I always say, if I could get the cassette to shut off. Now, for some people, it'd be an 8-track. For some people, it's the crazy tape. You're not enough. You're inadequate. You're too much, or you're nothing.
Yeah. And that's the accuser. that's the accusing voice. And often those voices sound like someone in our past. They sound like an experience we've had. Like I just shared, you need to hurry up. You're taking up too much time. So there's some experience of mine that has created that voice inside of me that says, don't take up so much space. And so that too is not a limited list of things that we hear, but those are the false narratives, the lies, and those keep us stuck on this out in our adapted self patterns, because they come from, our experiences and our wounds and our, all kinds of ways that as we developed, those voices were there. And so we want this drawing then is, how do we move from that outer circle of the adapted self strategies and the stuckness of it all and those voices, like you said, that playing the cassette tape over and over, those things that we hear and believe about ourselves. How to, the movement of God is to move us toward the center, where we hear more often the loving voice, the truth about who we are. And so I added arrows to the whole thing, which was kind of and I love the arrows on the Enneagram, but I said in my book, they really don't ever land anywhere. Which is, there's movement. There's always movement. And I love the harmony triads like you do, that there's always movement rather than arriving at one place and there you are. So I don't have issues with the arrows on the Enneagram, but I thought I added arrows just to indicate our pilgrimage from the outside to the inside, to the outer strategies, to the inner life union with God and living more in the center. And so I placed the Enneagram in between as part of that, a tool on this journey that helps us to recognize those false beliefs, those old voices, those narratives, and where we're stuck and how we think we have to be and do and be, to be okay in the world. And the Enneagram is so enlightening for for helping us see that. And then we just move further in. I
so agree. And it's part of, and I love this, and you and I haven't connected a while, but it is part of the work I think we've both done. Because I'm the same way. Like I was in that space for a while where it was the tool that was helping to lead and guide me. The tool was a tool. Right. And as we've developed our community and some of the work that we do, we began to recognize too that we were growing into new spaces. I love that you developed this work. We've developed a work of like, once you've discovered that being piece of self, how do you live that out in your everyday, ordinary life? Because you're going to have to take your discovery of your new self into the world. And so this tool I see as the drawing is, it is not that you're going to arrive here either, right? You're always, every day it's like you start fresh and new. Like every day I've got to realign the messages, erase the tape, start over again. And my scripture that I go to all the time that I really base is the Message version of Romans 12:1-2. Take your everyday, ordinary life, you're eating, sleeping, walking around life. And every day that life is going to give us new challenges and new things. And so this tool helps us to do what you just described from your beautiful ceremony and going, I could get really stuck on that. I could really ruin the whole day. The thoughts of the whole day could be blown into this story that, well, it was really too long. And then you share that with someone that it was really special to your husband or whoever. And they're like, no, it wasn't. And you just broke my bubble. And, all the things that could come from that story. So I love that we both moved to a place of doing different and new work from a tool that was huge in both of our stories, but God had another thing, a next, and that's God. He's always in the next. And so, I cannot wait to share this book more and more within our community, within what we're building. I can't wait to share it where you see it going. So tell us a little bit more about when the book is coming, when it's available, because I know you and I are both kind of in the middle of book launches.
Yeah.
It's kind of how we reconnected again. So tell us more, because I know people are going to be drawn. Make sure you go to the show notes and get the graphic. But what's the timeline? When is this being birthed in the world?
Yeah. Thank you. I just one comment on what you said. I just want to affirm what you said about recentering every day, or, you know, and it really is, that's what I wanted the arrows to indicate us. Which way are we facing? Are we facing towards God? Or are we turned and towards growth and towards transformation? Is that our posture? Are we facing that way with anticipation? Or are we turning our back and saying, I don't want to change. I want it my way, or what, you know, whatever.
I remember reading that, and I loved that statement. Which way are you facing?
Yeah. Which way are you turned?
That's good.
And that makes all the difference on
it does.
the way we move forward. So yes, my book's coming out October 18th. It's called Beyond the Enneagram, an invitation to experience a more centered life with God. And it's, you can, you know, pre-order it. If people pre-order it now, I don't know when this will be up and running.
Yeah, it'll be right before your launch. So we're coming out probably this will be live the second week or so in October. So it's going to be perfect to go along.
And I'm assuming that the pre-order deal is still on, that you can get 3 chapters right away or wait. But yeah, it's very exciting. It's, you know, it'll be out in the world then. It's felt like a really long process. So I'm ready to birth this baby.
Like it is kind of like that, isn't it? Well, we're excited for it. Just go to marilynvancil.com. You can find out all the details there. You know, I think we'll be releasing this in time for some of those pre-launch things that she's doing. I'm sure that we will. If not, we'll make sure it fits in the schedule. And if not, you can still buy the entire book. And I believe, Marilyn, if I saw right, is it already in an Audible form too? Or is that coming?
I think it'll all be at the same time.
Yeah. So you can get it in all the ways, you know, the Kindle, the ebook, all the things. I've learned so much about the book language since.
It's like a foreign language.
Like a whole new world to be in the author space. So I'm learning. But thank you for reconnecting with us. So marilynvancil.com. We love her work. I love the first book. I'm excited as I've been diving in, just getting started into the second book and this drawing piece that she's bringing. I think there is something for people around good language and good visuals that really help us lean in. So make sure that you go to the show notes and get those visuals. Check out both things that are coming. You know, you can always connect with us at thereallifeprocess.com, and our new book that will be hitting the shelves, I guess you would say, I don't know, November 1st, Do What Matters, Live from Rest, Not Rush. 2 good companions, because one is the self-discovery piece. One is how do I live it out in a modern day rule of life. And so 2 good books that can go together from both of us. So thank you, Marilyn, so much for being on the podcast today and being able to take the work that God has put into you out into the world.
Well, thank you. And congratulations to you, Teresa, too.
Thank you.
For your book. I look forward to reading it.
Thank you, friend.
All right. You too.
Well, everyone, thank you for this episode of the Real Life Process podcast and for Marilyn being on. Remember that every ordinary day has an extraordinary moment. You just have to look for them.